5 years ago, I lost 40 pounds on a plant-based diet, and I was thinking back to what I wish I had known at the beginning of that journey, where I would have actually been able to avoid most of the mistakes that I made for the 10 years previously, where every single year I would put, I want to lose like 40 pounds on my New Year's resolution, and I want to have food freedom, or I want to be fully raw, and all these things that for a decade basically stopped me losing weight and feeling like a failure for way too long. So what I want to share with you in this video is what these 10 things are, so that you can walk away with immediate action steps to get started on your own weight loss journey, and then also some encouragements if you're midway through that about how to keep going. Number one is that you must be in a calorie deficit if you want to lose fat. And I didn't understand this for the 10 years that I struggled to lose weight, because I always thought that it was some kind of perfection in my diet that was going to lead to results. So I had to be fully raw, or I had to be completely low carb. The moment that I had a potato or the moment that I had some bread, all of my diet went out the window. I went on a binge fest, obviously gained all the weight that I'd lost back. I was always looking for 100% perfection in whatever I was doing, and the harder that it felt, the more likely I was to get results. Like, that was what was happening in my mind, and I truly believed that my metabolism was broken. And I distinctly remember watching some YouTube videos of people who were eating kind of how I do now, and thinking their metabolism must be so much better than mine. They must have something really special about them, because I could never eat like that and lose weight. And I'm sure there's people that think that about me now. The thing is that all fat loss comes from eating less calories than you burn. And then what happens is your body is forced to just chip away at those stored fat cells that you have in your body and eventually shrink them over time if you're consistently eating less calories than you need. This is just weight loss 101. It is the first law of thermodynamics that energy can neither be created or destroyed. And even if you say things, well, what about like insulin, what about hormones, all of these things still work within the confines of a calorie deficit. And I remember when I first started to understand that calories actually did matter for weight loss, I was watching a Chef AJ video, and she had lined up all these different calorie dense foods, and there was potatoes at about 400 calories, there was oil at about 4,000 calories, and I just had this kind of light bulb moment that I could eat more food as long as it was the lower calorie foods, and that if I avoided or massively minimize some of those higher calorie foods that I was eating, like nuts and seeds, even though they're healthy, then I would automatically be eating less calories without having to eat less food. I have this one memory very early on in the beginning of weighing out a pumpkin, like a buttercup pumpkin, squash, whatever you want to call it, whatever country you're in, and realizing for this huge amount of food that I could eat all of it and like absolutely gorge myself over 2 meals, that it was only like 300 calories, and I couldn't believe it. My mind was like blown at the time. The second thing I learned was to eat a pound of non-starchy vegetables every single day. These are things like broccoli, capsicum, cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, really any watery vegetable, because they're only about 150 calories per pound. They're super low, so when you eat more of them, you offset the rest of your calories and you eat less calories overall. And I'm going to explain this like I did in another video recently. Let's use this circle to represent your daily calories, however many calories you currently eat. Let's say that that is 3,000 calories a day, right? And for this example, let's say you eat 4 pounds per day. Put a little @ symbol there. So we're going to split this day into two. We're going to say the first half is 1,500 calories, and then the second half is 1,500 calories. And let's say now you add 2 pounds of broccoli to your day. You're already going to have 2 pounds of whatever else you're eating, but those other 2 pounds are going to be made up of broccoli. And we know that a head of broccoli is about 150 calories. So by subtracting half of what you're currently doing and then adding in half veggies, now you've got 300 calories instead of 1,500 calories. So this takes your day from being 3,000 calories at 4 pounds of food to 1,800 calories, which is 1,500 plus 300. And this is very similar if you've heard of the 50-50 plate method, but why I like this better is that it's based on something more concrete than just you visualizing how much food you're eating. Because if you put half a plate of lettuce, that's only going to add like 100 grams of food, a tiny amount, where it's not going to really influence how much else you eat during the day, whereas weight of veggies does. And it doesn't matter how many calories you specifically eat in a day or you need in a day, the moment you start adding in more vegetables, the math always works out that you are significantly lowering your calories. And this not only works conceptually, but it works in practice as well, not only for myself, but thousands of other people. It is the same concept that people like Chef AJ or the Ultimate Weight Loss Starch Program use. It is the same thing that anyone who is predictably low in calories is using. If you look at any fitness influencer online, they typically eat a ton of vegetables, and this is the reason for that. So immediately after you exit this video, maybe you want to exit right now and there's some cats going on, there's something really interesting over there on the sidelines. Before you do that, make a commitment that when you leave this video, you're gonna go and measure out 1 pound of vegetables, and you're just gonna try and eat that every single day. Put an alarm on your calendar where you can get those veggies ready the night before, and then just empty that box, empty that container throughout the day, and you are gonna start losing weight like so easily if you just build that habit. The third thing I learned was what foods to eat a lot of, and then what foods to limit or avoid. And there's some really fascinating studies where they get people to eat ad libitum, which is as much food as they want, and as long as they're eating foods under 700 calories per pound, then people just lose weight, because there's only so much food that you can eat, and if all of the food that you're eating is in this kind of low calorie dense range, then you're going to automatically lose fat because you've got less calories into your diet. I know it's kind of wild, but it actually works. So what does it actually practically look like? Easiest thing to think of is, can I eat this food if all it needs is cooking, washing, or peeling? So that would be things like potatoes, they just need to be washed and cooked. Beans, they just need to be rinsed and cooked. Fruits, it just needs to be rinsed and then eaten. Vegetables, same thing, you can cook it or you can eat it raw. But it would exclude things like oil, which actually take a lot of processing in order to get them to that refined state. And oil is actually the highest calorie dense food on the planet, because you take something that's a whole food, you take an olive, you remove the water, and you remove the fiber, so now you have more calories packed into a smaller space, which means that it's about 4,000 calories per pound. There's no food that's higher than that. You think about chips or crackers, they have a lot of processing to get them to that state, so they're not fitting into that category. So avoid them or massively minimize them. So how you actually want to build your meals this way is you want to have half of your vegetables, you've got your pound, so half at lunch and then half at dinner, is what I like to do. And then half of your meal is going to be those other starchy foods. So tofu, sweet potato, rice, beans, or a combination of those things. And then about 1 to 2 tablespoons is actually going to be a bit of a higher calorie food, like avocado, and then some nuts and seeds or some nut butters. And when you do that and you put that all together, you've got a whole foods meal that works out to about 500 to 600 calories. And I've tested hundreds of these meals with this very simple framework, which is what I call my HATS framework, which you can find out about in this video next. I don't know which side to do, I think it's left. And everything else you just want to massively limit or even avoid if you want to use the same frameworks that I did to lose weight, which has been really, really easy compared to everything else that I've tried. Number 4, I wish I'd known that I could snack on fruits and veggies because they're so low in calories and they're actually really delicious, especially fruit. So I love to do oranges, I'll do apples, I'll do pears, I'll do frozen berries, I'll do fresh berries. They're super low in calories, especially berries. They're naturally sweet, so it's always something that is like enjoyable to have. And it's only going to add about 100 to 200 calories to your day, which is much, much less if you were to eat crackers or chips or really any other snack, which is going to add 500, maybe even 1,000 calories depending on what you're eating. Number 5, and this is a big one, is I learned to not go hungry, because all the other diets I tried, I was always fighting this urge to binge because I was hungry. And once you realize that it's not about the volume of food that you eat, it really is about the energy, which is the calories of those foods, then it doesn't matter how much food you eat, it's more important about what you eat and the calorie content, which you can actually eat more this way, which helps to stave off some of those feelings of hunger, which typically result in a binge or having extreme cravings that then almost always results in us being inconsistent in our diets. Like I had this for so many years where I would eat very, very small portions. I remember one time I was literally eating like a pear and an apple or like a tiny smoothie at dinner, and I had to go to bed at 8 p.m. I was about 21 at the time. I really just thought this was the only way for me to lose weight. I thought my metabolism was that broken. And I remember being so hungry at night and not going out and not socializing ever because I knew that I would binge if I didn't. The crazy thing was that even though I would lose weight for like a week or so, the sad thing was a week later from that, very predictably, I would have a big binge. And it wasn't even like the most yum food, but I would eat like half a loaf of bread. I'd put tons of jam on it. We have this really kind of gross cereal here in New Zealand and Australia, which is called Wheat Bix. And I would just be piling on the Wheat Bix, piling on like the peanut butter, making these weird as combinations because my body was just hungry. And then all of the progress that I'd made would essentially be lost because I kept doing this cycle. Thankfully, I just never do this anymore. And it's extremely freeing to eat as much as you want, and to not have to manage hunger. The most satisfying food on the planet is actually potatoes. So I try and add potatoes to all of my days and at least to most of my meals. So I have oatmeal in the morning, but I'll typically have a potato meal for lunch and then something with potatoes in it for dinner. And because potatoes are only 400 calories per pound, even if you are super hungry one day and you add an extra potato to your meal, which will be about 100 calories, that's way less than if you were to go like, oh, you know what, I don't want to be eating too much, like I'm on a diet, and then because you're not full and satisfied, you go and have a bag of chips later, which will be adding 1,200 calories to your diet. So don't be scared of potatoes. Actually eat more of them. This is something that we tell our clients a lot when they're struggling with inconsistency and they're struggling with binging, is to eat more potatoes. And I don't know if you noticed on that chart, but croissants, unfortunately, I love croissants. I had the best almond croissant like a couple of weeks ago. They are the lowest in terms of satiety. So there's something to be said there. Number 6 is I learned to start weighing myself every single day and then taking the average over the week. Rather than feeling just like absolutely terrible when I was expecting to see progress after a week or a month, and then randomly my weight would be up. If I'd have taken an average, then I would have known that I was trending down and I just had one random high. But when I was seeing that without the full data, I always felt terrible, and it would normally lead to me actually giving up on my diets. Not only does daily weighing help you to learn more about your own fluctuations and cycles, which I think is really important, especially as a woman, but it's also an amazing tool for accountability long term. I still weigh myself to this day because there are multiple studies that look at daily weighing being an incredible accountability tool for weight maintenance, to the point that there's actually a study which has 2 people groups over a 6-week period. Group A didn't weigh themselves, and this is over Christmas. They gained 4.9 pounds. Group B didn't change anything, but they weighed themselves and they lost 3.9 pounds. The other cool thing with all of these studies we have on weighing yourself daily, there hasn't been shown to be any negative mental health consequences, which I know might sound crazy, but when the number just becomes data, it stops being emotional. Number 7 is I learned that if I wasn't able to stay consistent with my diet, it was always one of 3 things. The first one is almost always hunger. So if I went out for a couple of hours with my kids and I was intending to be home earlier, but then the day got away from us and I ended up being hungry, I'd find that I'd end up going through a drive-thru or getting something that I didn't really want to eat. So I realized that hunger massively influenced my decision making, and so I would eat a potato before I would leave, or I would put a potato in the microwave and bring it with me. If your consistency is regularly tanking, then just start eating more potatoes and then see if you need to change anything else. It's normally always the problem. The second thing is going to be preparation and organization. So if you're at an event and you haven't planned what food you're going to be eating there, then you're going to default, probably due to hunger, to whatever's in front of you. So I learned that I have to actually put a little bit more time and effort before I go to things, before I leave my home environment, so that I'm actually going to have food that I want to have. And even now I have sweet potato and I have tofu and I have broccoli in my fridge because I'm prepped and I'm planned and I'm ready to go, so that I can eat those foods today for my lunch and for my dinners. My breakfast today was overnight oats and I had everything ready to go. I just did a video on how I meal prep realistically, and if you're interested in that, I go all over these things in that video, which you can watch next. The third thing is environment. And James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, says that environment is a hidden hand that shapes our behavior, which means that the way we set up the world that we live in is going to change our behavior more than our internal willpower. So what I learned was that I don't want to have foods that tempt me in my house. I don't want to have ice cream in my house. I don't have chocolate in my house. I want to have fruit on my counter instead of cookies. When I go and I'm with friends who have big bags of chips and crackers and other things that I do actually want to eat, I bring grapes, I bring carrots, I bring something that feels like a treat for me, so that I'm more likely to eat those things because they're actually in my environment. And I'm not going to default to my regular habits in my regular environment, which is I'll just eat whatever's there. Your environment can make it easier or harder for you to stay consistent. And what I've always seen is that smart people just shape an environment that makes follow through on the behaviors that they want easy. They're always looking for, how do I remove friction to actually implementing. The 8th thing that I wish I'd known at the beginning of my weight loss journey was to strength train and to actually do that instead of cardio. Like, you can still do cardio, but for weight loss, strength training is going to be better because you're going to build more muscle, which is going to help you to look more toned as you get closer to your ideal body weight. It's going to help you to burn more calories at rest. It's going to give you more energy, and it's going to make you feel like a freaking badass. That one cannot be underrated. I mean, being able to do 10 pull-ups now And knowing that I've put in the perseverance to do that after never, ever being able to do one, gives me so much pride and accomplishment that it's so much easier for me to stay consistent in my diet because I know I can do hard things. The other thing I often think about is there's no point just being skinnier if your actual quality of life is not good. And we are losing bone density as we age. I just had ACL reconstruction. I'm very much feeling the effects of not being able to move my body in the way that I want to, not feeling strong, having a year of recovery ahead of me. And so I'm extremely motivated to keep myself strong and fit so that I can play with my kids longer, I can be a good grandma, and I don't have to be walking around in a walker when I'm like 70 years old. So if any of those things are important to you, start building a strength training habit now. Number 9 is to simply go to bed on time. And this is something that I'm still working on, but I've realized how important this is because there are multiple studies that look at you being able to retain muscle while losing weight, because when you're losing weight, you're going to be losing a bit of muscle as well. Strength training definitely helps. It's a big piece of it. But sleep and adequate protein actually helps as well. Sleep, crazily, is one of the hugest things that influence how much muscle you lose while in a calorie deficit. This is the definition of working smarter, not harder. Not only that, if you are well rested, and like mums of little ones, if you have newborns, I hear you, I've been through that. Like that was the time when I was losing weight. My daughter was 3 months old. It is hard. But the more that you can prioritize doing what you can to get an early night, the more in a good brain space you will be to actually follow through on all of these things. And what that's meant for me is that I do not watch shows at night. I do not watch movies. I know this sounds kind of crazy. Maybe I watch a movie like once every 2 months. I have time blockers on my phone so that I can't scroll social media after a certain time. And I always get up pretty early so that I'm forced to go to bed at a decent time because otherwise I just know my whole day is going to be shot later on. And this is actually one of the easiest things you can do if you want to build a habit of going to bed early, is just get up early, because there's only so long you can burn the candle at both ends. If you have your getting up, if you have a gym habit, if you have something that you're doing in the morning as a non-negotiable, you will learn to go to bed on time. Number 10, and this is really important not just for weight loss, but achieving any kind of goal, and that is to shift your perspective from achieving an outcome, which is, say, losing 40 pounds, to becoming a kind of person through changing your identity and having consistent daily habits. You need to shift from, I want to lose weight, diet, to I want to build habits, because it's our habits today that are going to determine who we are a year from now, not our goals. Most people have goals. Successful people, unsuccessful people. The difference is that successful people have habits that lead them to their goals. A big piece of this is to lengthen your timeline. I know for me, a lot changed when I thought about the way that I was dieting, and I was thinking, you know what, I could lose weight faster if I went on a juice thing, like don't even want to think about it, if I did fully raw again. But I knew I wasn't going to be able to maintain those habits. And so I started to ask the question of, what could I conceivably do for the rest of my life? I can eat a pound of vegetables for the rest of my life. I can not have to go hungry for the rest of my life. I can work out consistently. And so these are things that I still do to this day. The things that got me losing 40 pounds, those principles, those habits are the same things that I do now. They are the same things that I will continue to do for the rest of my life. So when you think about this goal that you have, and you think about who you need to become in order to achieve that, think about how they act. Does you, 40 pounds lighter, fail occasionally? Do they binge occasionally? Okay, well, what do they do afterwards? Do they wallow in self-pity, or do they get back straight on track? You can do that today and now. Like, you can do that now. You can build that habit now. If you, 40 pounds down, been able to do 10 pull-ups, can't do a full workout, does future you sit on the couch and watch Netflix, or do they go and get a 20-minute workout in? Probably they go and get the 20-minute workout. Does future you learn from their mistakes? Or do they go, oh, I'm a failure, I can't do it, this is too hard? You tell me. Every single setback we have is an opportunity to learn if we choose to see it that way. Alex Hormozy, who I greatly respect, defines learning as same condition, new behavior. So if you learn that you end up eating your kids' cookies because they were there on the counter and you were hungry, then next time either don't have the cookies there or don't be hungry, because same condition, new behavior. Learning. I believe that most people fail because they are notoriously bad at recognizing patterns accurately in their own lives and then making the necessary adjustments. So instead, see what you do, not what you want to do, not what you think you should do, but what you actually do. Ate the cookie, didn't work out, went through the drive-thru, didn't prep when you say that you were going to, what you actually did, and instead of saying, oh, I'll be better next time, which is no new behavior because you've said that a million times, ask, how could I change my environment? What can I learn from this? How would I make it easier for me to be successful? How would I remove the friction to me actually implementing? Remember, it's almost always one of those three things: hunger, preparation, or environment. And you have control over those three things. So to finish up, I hope you found those 10 things helpful. Weight loss is not rocket science. It is calories in, it is calories out. That is hard enough. We do not need to complicate it more than that. The hard part about fat loss is actually changing our behavior. And the easiest way to do this is to make it as simple and easy and frictionless to follow through on the things that you say that you're going to do so that you actually do them. And if you want more help with the behavioral change side of things, this is what we go super deep on my podcast, the Lean with Lance podcast. I'm going to link it in the description. And I'd love to hear in the comments which of these 10 things you found most helpful. And I'll see you next week for another video. All right, that's it. Bye.